Alright guys, well welcome back to the channel. As you guys saw, today's video is all about fixing, hopefully, my wheel hopping issue in drift. That being said, we've kind of played around with a bunch of ideas, but ultimately we've come down to just the rear shocks aren't meant to go as low as I've had it. The car, if I remember right, the kit is not supposed to go any lower than like 2 inches, maybe 2.5. But a long time ago, you guys remember, I took out the bottom adjustment collar mechanism, everything. So we're about 1/2 inch lower than the kit was originally meant for. That being said, I did get in contact with ISC. I went ahead and placed an order for shorter shocks. So what you guys can see, here's the standard shock body that comes with the kit. And then on the right, we have the custom one that I ordered from them. It's minus 20 millimeters, so 20 millimeters shorter. And being that the car is somewhere around 20 millimeters lower than what the kit is designed for, this should put us in the realm of the shocks actually working. We should put us in the realm of correct valving and shock for the spring and the ride height. That being said, I am going to clean everything up just because those shocks are pretty dirty. They've been on the car for a while, and I want to make sure that I'm not just putting them back together and making them dirtier. So I'm going to go ahead and spray everything down, wipe them down one by one, and then we're going to get them back in the car. We'll go ahead and preload the suspension, and then we'll take the car on a test drive. It won't be any like spirited driving, just a couple pulls and some cornering just to see how it feels and see how much better it feels, and then we'll kind of go from there. But I'm going to jump into cleaning this up and reassembling the driver's side rear shock, and then we'll check back in as we're going. All right, well, we got the car sitting back down on the ground. Obviously, the ride height's not gonna look much different, but I'm just gonna take it around the block and kind of see how it feels, and then we'll chat about that. Okay, well, we're back from a drive. I tried to film it, but honestly, there's really not much that you can see on the footage, so we're just gonna talk about what I felt. Realistically, it doesn't translate into video, so I don't want to put 2 minutes of me driving in the video when it's just me driving and you're not really going to see anything that I'm talking about here. So let's talk about the effects of changing the rear shocks to something shorter, so that way we can actually make use of longer stroke. I'm just going to close the garage down really quick and then we'll chat. Okay, so what we're talking about here is changing the rear shocks to allow the rear suspension to function correctly. Now the front is not super low. I'm on the ISC N1 V2s, which are supposed to allow 2.5 inches of drop at most, right? Now that being said, I didn't like the way the rear of the car looked at only 2.5 inches lower from stock. So I took the adjustment ring, the threaded ring on the adjusting collar on the rear out. That effectively lowered the car another, like, we'll call it just under 1/2 inch, right? Problem is that that's lower than what the coilovers were designed to do, or the shocks rather. The shocks, or at least the ones that came with the kit, these ones, they were only designed for the kit to go 2.5 inches lower. Removing another 1/2 inch of ride height from it, it's hard to describe without seeing it because that's just the way my brain works. But long story short, the longer shock can only adjust so deep into the outer housing, or the lower mount of the shock for the e46. That being said, it didn't give me enough adjustment to correctly preload the rear suspension. At least people do it a couple different ways. You either like preload it by bump stop or by actual like spring compression. This time around, I went back to the original way that I did it when I first put the coilovers on the car, and the way I had it when I went to my first 2 drift events. If you guys remember, if you guys have been around on the channel, or if you want to go back and watch, this is before I had any kind of wheel hop or wheel skipping or whatever you want to call it, right? Now, once I removed 1/2 inch from the collar, I believe what was happening was due to the fact that those shocks were only designed to go so low, and the fact that I couldn't actually adjust them deep enough into the threaded shock housing to add that 5 millimeters to 10 millimeters of compression and spring at droop. What ended up happening is there was not enough compression for the rear shocks to perform how they're supposed to, but it was also causing the rear shocks to bottom out. So I think that's what ultimately was causing a lot of my skipping, was the shocks were trying to keep up with how low the car was. And when they were trying to compress, they weren't allowed to compress correctly, and they were striking the bottom of the shock and causing wheel hop, right? Effectively, I think that's what ultimately blew my coilovers out. Now, I'm not like the best mind when it comes to suspension. Please don't send me a DM asking me to fix yours. This is after talking to a lot of much smarter people than myself, who actually really understand this a lot better than I do. But the 20 millimeter shorter shocks, we were able to thread deeper into the threaded shock body, right? That's obviously a relative number based off of the total length uncompressed of the shock when it's 20 millimeters shorter versus the ones that came with the kit, right? So total height of the shock is shorter, meaning I can go deeper in, but I'm getting more of the stroke out of this out of the rear shocks now because I'm able to correctly preload it. So at droop, I'm somewhere between 5 and 10 millimeters of preloaded compression on the rear springs when it's at full droop. That being said, once it's sitting on the ground, it's obviously compressing those shocks a little bit more, but it's giving it more range to travel in that shock and control the springs, which ultimately, I know enough about coilovers to know that your shock isn't your ride height adjustment, it just controls your rear springs or helps dampen the forces, right? So that being said, going around the block a couple times, unfortunately I wasn't able to get any spirited driving in, only because Sunday everybody's out enjoying their day, riding their bikes, it's sunny, they're going on walks. I don't want to be the asshole that's coming around the corner sideways in front of a family. It's not really my cup of tea. And there was not really anywhere that I could go at the time being to really like put in a couple test hits. But the things I can comment on are ride quality, right? So being that I didn't want to raise the car back up, we had to get 20mm shorter shocks. And I will say that just driving around normal cornering or cornering a little aggressively, and especially hitting bumps on the road, the car no longer feels like it has metal rods instead of shocks. It actually rides and soaks up bumps at least as good as it's going to with the spring rates that I have, right? It does definitely feel better. I'm not gonna be able to fully comment on it until the next time we get out to the track, which should be coming up on the 15th. We have a drifters clinic and then just a local drift and drag. So we're gonna go do that. And then on April 5th, we have a modded culture event that we'll be going and driving at. So I'll really be able to feel out the new suspension. I'm gonna have to play around with dampening again and make sure that my settings are correct in the rear to have it feel right with the new shocks. But overall, I think it feels a lot better just driving. And hopefully that translates into what it's doing when I'm drifting the damn thing too. So overall, I'm super happy. I did take a little bit of extra time just to clean everything up and make it look nice and go back together and not just put dirty parts on new parts. But super happy with how the car's handling at this point. I just honestly have to get it to the track to really feel it out and get a final opinion on whether or not that's fixed. The only other thing that we can really do in the rear is going to be doing rear trailing arm bushings. I'm still running stocks. I don't have any limiters in them. It's just the Drift Tech toe brackets with the old rubber R-tabs. I do want to go spherical. It's just another cost that I'm biding my time on, just because, well, we have some other things that we're cooking up. So overall, super happy with how the car rides. It's not really sitting any differently, but that's not the point. The point was to hopefully get the wheel hopping issue taken care of, so that way the suspension handles how it should. It'll be a lot easier to keep the power on the ground and keep control of the car when it's not jumping all over the place on me. So that being said, if you guys want to get a little bit more into detail as far as suspension, feel free to ask questions down in the comments below. Either I can answer them or the people that I defer to can answer them, because they are much smarter and more knowledgeable on suspension setup than I am. But so far, I think we're already on the right track. The car handles a lot better and I'm just happy with it. So that being said, I'm gonna wrap today's video up here. If you guys liked today's video, I know it was just a quick install, but again, remember, this whole channel's point is I'm just a 9-to-5 working dude like you guys, and I gotta get what I can done. I gotta get what I can done when I can. And this is just one of those projects that it takes up a little bit of my time, but it has to be done so that way the car can start driving a little bit better. But yeah, if you guys liked today's video, hit like, comment any questions or comments you guys have down below, and make sure to remember to subscribe. We're definitely trucking. We're already on pace to hit one event a month this year. So we're trying to do 12 events this year, and then we'll see what next year brings. But we have a lot more content coming up soon. So stay tuned for that. I appreciate you guys all for tuning in again. Thank you all. Much love. Stay easy. And until next time, peace.
Get down in the car, one time give it all, bust it open hard, let me see you drop. Get down in the car, one time give it all, bust it open hard, let me see you drop. I fucked up this Russell, baby hustle, but the oh my I fucked up this Russell, baby hustle, but the oh my